There is no other organ quite like the uterus. If men had such an organ, they would brag about it. So should we. Now I want to start with telling you my own birth story. I was born at home in Cape Town, South Africa. My parents, after trying for many years to become pregnant, fell pregnant with me. And having a chiropractic education in their background and having an understanding of how the body works and how things progress during pregnancy and labor, my parents chose to have a home birth. They felt this was the best option for them. So they decided to have a home birth with a midwife. Now this option may not fit everyone, but for them it worked. My mother had a very uncomplicated pregnancy. She worked right up until I was born. She had a good understanding with chiropractic of how the body works, the changes that she was experiencing during pregnancy, and what she could expect during the birthing process. She felt comfortable that her body, her inner ability, had the strength to be able to bring a child into this world naturally at home. She knew she had this innate wisdom. She knew she had this inner strength that her body could and would deliver a happy and healthy baby. And that is what happened. They had this beautiful home birth with a midwife in their bedroom. Very slow progression of labor, but not uncomfortable. Until the active labor part started and I gave her back labor, and then she wasn't such a fan of that. But she walked through it. She moved through it. She did yoga. She was checked regularly and adjusted with need during the birthing process. And I was born, and it went well. And right after I was born, I was placed in my mother's chest. I was left to lay there, let the umbilical cord pulsate until it was done pulsating, pumping in all the good stuff for the immune system. And then when it was done, it was cut. And within an hour after being born, I was breastfeeding. And within 3 hours after that, I received my first chiropractic check. Now I say my first chiropractic check because I didn't actually receive an adjustment. I didn't need one. But my parents, both being chiropractors, knew the importance of checking the spine for vertebral subluxations right after birth to make sure there was no interference to my nervous system that could affect how my body functioned. So they wanted to make sure right away that I was functioning as well as I possibly could be. Now this is something that we learn as chiropractors, to trust in our body's own innate ability, our own innate wisdom. And that's something we need to focus on in pregnancy. Now of you ladies here today, some of you are pregnant, some of you are thinking of becoming pregnant, or some of you have had children. Now I want you to think a little bit about that birthing process. Yeah? In the beginning, we start with a little tiny egg and a tiny sperm cell, and they come together, and in a process of 9 months, in a period of 40 weeks, in a period of 265 days, it develops into this human being. Now how incredible is that? And we don't even have to think about it consciously. This is something that happens naturally. We don't have to sit down each day and focus on, all right, today we're going to grow the lungs. And then tomorrow we're going to start with the heart. And then the next day we're going to do the ears. Right? We don't have to use any conscious energy on this because our body has the innate wisdom. It has the innate knowledge to be able to grow a baby. And how incredible is that? Yeah? We start with this tiny little egg cell, this tiny little sperm cell. And in 265 days we have a human being. Yeah? And during that process, our uterus, it expands, it grows, our organs get all pushed up, everything gets moved out of the way so that the uterus and the baby have space, right? We get this relaxin hormone going to make sure that the pelvis is all loose, open, able to expand, place for the baby to come out. Yeah? All of that happens without us having to tell our body to do that. Now, I think that's pretty cool, right? We have this innate intelligence, this innate wisdom that just does everything. Yeah? And when it's time for the birthing process to come, our water goes, right? The cervix goes from being so much open to being so much open, right? And again, without us having to think about this, our body does these things naturally, right? We have this intelligence, we have this ability to go through a pregnancy and to go through a birthing process without much interference from the outside. But unfortunately, what we see happening in today's world is more and more interference from the outside. Yeah. Women are losing faith in their own body and not trusting their own ability that they can have a baby naturally. Okay? I see this every day in my practice. Now, when I ask females, what are you thinking about for your birthing process? Yeah, have you thought about a birth plan? Have you decided how you want this to go? Most of them tell me, I'll take it as it comes. Some of them are like, I might take an epidural, I might not. I might have some painkillers, I might not. Right? They're not really making a decision. And what's interesting here is we as females, we like to be in control. We like to have full control of what's happening. But by actually not creating a birth plan, by not thinking ahead of how we want the birth process to go, we're already giving up our control. We're giving that away to somebody else to say, well, you guys are the medical doctors, you have the experience, you just take it over and I'll just go with it. That's essentially what we're doing. By not having a thought process, by not having a conversation to think about how do I actually want this birth process to go. Because in a sense, you do have quite a bit of control of how it should happen. Now let's talk a little bit about what we see happening in the world today. Yeah, we see an increase in C-sections throughout the world. Now in Norway, it's been pretty stable the last 5 years, but we're still seeing that every 6th child is being born by a C-section. Okay, but the number that we see increasing the most is the number of how many children are having interventions during childbirth. So currently in Norway, we're at 43% with interventions. And that is epidural, that's episiotomy, that's if they're using a vacuum, if they're using a forceps, any type of intervention from the outside to help the baby come out. Okay? So we're seeing an increase in that, as well as an increase in induced labors. Now the problem that we see with this is that we're not understanding what effects this actually has on our body and what effects it actually has on the child. Because we're being told that it doesn't have an effect or very little effect. In fact, a medical doctor in Norway recently came out with a statement that he sees no reason why females should go through the birthing process with pain. Right? We have painkillers for everything else, so why not use them for every birth? Right? Now some of you might be saying, oh, that sounds really nice. I don't really want to go through the pain. Yeah? But by not actually knowing what effects those painkillers have on the baby, you're doing yourself an injustice. Yeah? You need to be prepared and have some background information and know what's actually happening during the process so you can make the best decision for yourself. Because those C-sections, those epidurals, those forceps, those vacuums, they are there for a reason because there is situations where we do need those medical interventions, right? But we don't need them at the rate we're seeing these days. And we're now in a unique situation where we're seeing with this generation of kids that are being born that they're actually sicker than our generation. And they have a shorter lifespan than our generation, right? Why is this happening? Why are we seeing an increase in ADHD, in autism, and in childhood sicknesses? Could it have something to do with how we're bringing our children into the world? Yeah, I believe so. There's so many aspects that play in to how the birthing process occurs. All right. One of the biggest hormones that is a big part of how the birthing process occurs is a hormone called oxytocin. Okay. This is the one that helps us go through the stages of labor and helps with the baby coming out. So now if we think about the stages of labor, our water goes, right? We get that dilation of our cervix. Yeah. We start to push. We get those contractions. Yeah. The baby works its way down into the pelvis. It expels, it presses its way out. And then after some time, we press out the placenta, right? And during this whole process, our oxytocin hormone is working with us, okay? It's helping us with the dilation of the cervix. It's helping us with the contractions to push the baby out of there, yeah? At the same time, it's getting the baby into the birth canal, yeah? It's expelling the placenta, yeah? And it's limiting the bleeding. And oxytocin is also known as the hormone of love because it's one that brings our milk in and it's the one that connects us to our child. So it's a pretty important hormone during this birthing process. But what we see happening is that when the birthing process starts and we realize, oh man, this is a lot more pain than we're comfortable with, and we choose to have that epidural, yeah, we receive the epidural, and actually quite a few, high percentage of the time, it doesn't actually totally work. And we may only get numbness in one part of our body and not the other part. So we still experience a lot of pain. And now we're confined to a bed. We can't get up. We can't move around. We can't work with gravity. We can't move our pelvis to open things up, to get things going, right? We get stressed because of this. And what does that stress do? That stress lowers our levels of natural oxytocin. Yeah? And increases our level of adrenaline. And those two work opposites of each other. So we're in a stress situation, we're producing adrenaline, we can't move, and our oxytocin is down. So what can happen? It can stop the labor process. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but we see it happen quite often. Yeah? So it stops the labor process. We stress out even more. We produce even less oxytocin. Yeah? More adrenaline. And now what has to happen? Now we need the medicine. Now we need the Pitocin, the synthetic oxytocin, to be injected so that we can get labor going again. Right? Because the epidural actually has an effect on the oxygen to the baby's brain. So then there's a bit of a stress that if labor isn't progressing fast enough, we need to get it going again so that we make sure that there's no effect to this child. Okay? So we get that Pitocin and labor starts again. But the problem when we get that Pitocin is unlike when we have our natural oxytocin, which goes in waves. We get contractions, it's really painful, we go through the phase, we come down, we relax, we breathe, we get our energy back, and we go through the next one, right? We go through these up and down waves. But when we get the Pitocin, we only go up. There's no rest, there's no break, it's just full level contractions. Yeah? And again, this puts us in a stress situation, right? Because this is more than we can handle. And what happens? We produce less oxytocin, we produce more adrenaline, right? So when that baby finally does come out and we have that baby lying on our chest, we don't get that immediate connection that we could have gotten if our oxytocin levels were high. Yeah? We might also bleed a little bit more. We might even rip a little bit more because we don't have that oxytocin working the way it should. Yeah? And in the same regard, our milk might not come in right away because, again, oxytocin helps bring our milk in. And if our oxytocin level is down, our milk production is going to go down. So it might take some days or it might not come in at all. Okay? So these are things we need to think about because what we see happening is we see a very strong divide appearing in pregnancy. And that's the divide between home births, natural, non-intervention, and medical intervention births. Okay? We see those both sides actually increasing and a very strong divide there. So what we need to do is we need to learn about our bodies, trust in our own bodies, know our bodies, have this inner strength, this raw strength to be able to go through pregnancy, to be able to go through the birthing process and have a happy, healthy baby. But we don't trust in ourselves anymore. It's much easier to give our strength to somebody else and have them live with the consequences because it wasn't us actively choosing what happened. Now again, I want to reiterate the fact that there is a time and place when there is medical intervention needed, but it is still being used too often because we are not trusting in our own body's ability. We're scared. We're scared of losing control. We're scared of the pain. Instead of knowing that this is a natural process our body goes through, we as females have this amazing chance, this amazing opportunity to go through pregnancy and birth, something men can never go through, right? It's such a raw, natural, amazing experience that we should feel honored to be able to go through. And this is often something that's forgotten. And we see pregnancy being treated more and more like a sickness. Yeah? More than likely there's actually something wrong with you when there isn't. Your body's doing what it's made to do. It's doing this natural, amazing thing. Okay? Now, a part of pregnancy that is very important is chiropractic. Okay? Chiropractic is correcting vertebral subluxations in the spine that have effect on how our nerve system is functioning. All right? Now, vertebral subluxation is a misalignment of two vertebrae in the spinal cord, which could have an effect on how the nerves are functioning. Okay? The importance of this is that when our baby is growing and developing, we need to make sure there actually is physically good space in the pelvis, because remember the uterus is suspended in the pelvis. So you want to make sure there's proper alignment in the pelvis. Nothing there that could be causing any tension in the uterus. As well as proper nerve function to the uterus. Right? There's nothing there that's interfering with that while our baby is developing. Yeah? And that the baby has the good space that it needs so it can move around and it can get itself placed and ready for birth. Okay? So we are focused on removing dis-ease from the body. We're focused on restoring that connection between the brain and the body and making sure there's nothing there that's interfering with that process. Yeah? We also have this technique that we use that's called Webster's, and this technique is focused on the alignment of the pelvis and the alignment of the uterus. Yeah? So at the best possible space for the child, most possible nerve signals for the contractions for the developing fetus, as well as good space for the child to turn around and come out. Okay? So these are very important aspects. So often that misunderstanding that chiropractic is just for pain is actually incorrect, because we're actually focused on the function. We're focused on restoring proper function to the body so the body can do what it's made to do. Again, it has this innate intelligence, it has this innate strength, this innate wisdom, this innate ability to go through pregnancy and through the birthing process without interference. We're just there to help it along. Okay? So we need to remember this, because what we face today is that we're losing more and more of this power. We're losing more and more of this right, and we're giving it up. And that's why we see an increase in medical interventions. We see an increase in children being sick. So I want you to remember that we actually do have this ability, right? Our uterus is awesome. I mean, how cool is it? And like I said before, it is a unique organism. It is a unique organ. And if men had one, they would brag about it. So why aren't we bragging about it, right? Because we have this raw natural ability to have a child. And we should honor that and respect that and trust in it and learn to trust in ourselves. So I want you to remember that. And actually take away from this that you have an amazing intelligent system that knows what it's doing. We just need to give it the space to do its job. Thank you.